Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the NLC for the final game of the regular split. We have had many weeks of League of Legends before us, but now it is time for everything to be settled up. My name is Middlecott. I don't know why my camera looks like this, but I'm going to be joined by Veteran, who's looking a lot more normal.
What's up, what's up? Got the blue tints in here for the upcoming Nord win against Riddle that will solidify my position as the #1 undisputed in the prediction race, Middlecott, which is, of course, our match of the day.
And of course, that's the only thing that we care about, Veteran, is the prediction race. But let's see if we can have another look at those games that we are going to be having on the docket for the day. The final 4 regular season games that we're going to be seeing play out. A lot of implications in these matches that we're going to get to a little bit later, kicking it off with Verdant versus UniQ. Then, like you were mentioning, that match of the day between Riddle and Nord. Then Ruddy taking on Veneer, and Natives and Domino rounding up the split. Veteran, got a lot of exciting games today.
We do. Obviously, full investment on the Riddle Nord one, where me and Aragon are actually differentiating on our votes there. If Aragon gets that, he can actually catch up with me. So obviously, I don't want that to be the case. So big WoW fan. Looking into my French roots that I almost definitely do not have. But other than that, the Ruddy Veneer matchup is really interesting to me, because Veneer are looking to go all the way, right? And Ruddy, you know, they have looked a little bit shakier in the last few weeks, though they are getting all their wins. I think that's going to be a really close match, to be honest. Veneer finally figuring themselves out and having every reason to prove that they are that team to Ruddy. And then last game of the day, like, looking at Natives Domino, right, we normally would be like, no one really cares about this game, doesn't really matter, they're all bottom of the tables, they're playing for themselves, you know, and, you know, we'll be nice about it, you know, and we'll still cast and give it our all. But honestly, Natives, they got their first win. They got their first win and they looked good doing it. You know, they could this is actually an interesting final matchup there, Natives v Dominos. So,
I'd tell you what,
good games.
Natives 2-0 week would be absolutely fantastic,
yes,
but we did allude to some potential implications for these games. There are a lot of tiebreakers that we could be seeing, or that could be getting resolved at the end of this split. So I was wondering, production, if we could just pull up the standings so we could have a little bit of a look at what the table looks like now and how things can change. So we're going to start off looking at the Verdant UniQ match, right? If Verdant win this game, then they are going to be locking their position in playoffs. Whatever happens through the rest of the day, they are going to be in that 4th place spot, and they are going to be absolutely happy with that. Then moving on to our match of the day, Nord versus Riddle, which is our second game of the day. Whoever wins that game goes first in regular split. Nord currently at the top of the table with 12 wins, but if Riddle are able to even it up, both teams being at 12-2, Riddle own the head-to-head, and they would be first place coming out of the regular split. But if Riddle lose that game, then that sets up the potential for Ruddy to overtake them into second place if they are able to get a win over Veneer. Ruddy have had more wins in the second half of the split, so if they get tied on the head-to-head, that will be the tiebreaker, and Ruddy will leapfrog over Riddle to go into that second place spot that Riddle have had for so long this season. Then looking towards the bottom of the table, if UniQ lose and Domino are able to pull out a win in the final game of the day versus Natives, we're going to have a tiebreaker between them for 6th and 7th that will be played on Friday. And then finally, if Domino lose to Natives, Natives will go above them in the standings into 7th place because they've got more wins in this second half of the split. So a lot of stakes on the line for the final game day of the split. And Veteran, considering how the NLC has kind of felt a little bit cut and dry in some of the previous weeks, we've got a load of action to close us out at the end of this.
Yeah, I mean, even like there, it feels as if though UniQ maybe don't have the most to fight for out of all of the teams. But imagine they were to take out Verdant after Verdant were able to pull off the run that they've had, beating even Riddle of all opponents, right? Like, imagine they're able to make that kind of a statement after their loss yesterday. That would be huge, and it would also give Ruddy a real opportunity there to try to overtake Riddle and Veneer would have to win that game to be able to compete for their own final spot, right? Like, every single game matters. Obviously, everyone's predicted Verdant, but UniQ winning could really make the next games interesting.
Yeah, and I kind of want to home in on that first matchup that we have got today, Veteran. We've predicted as casters pretty unanimously that Verdant are going to take that, and obviously with that win, that would lock them into playoffs. For UniQ, do you feel like there's an angle that this team can attack in terms of what Verdant have been doing, or do we feel like the team that's higher in the standings has just got that little bit of extra power that is going to take them over the finish line?
I mean, I'd be lying if I wasn't heavily favouring Verdant here, particularly when I look at where their big strengths have come in. Because previously we were looking at this as like maybe a top dominant team, and then eventually it became kind of a no dominant team that could make comebacks. But now, I mean, we have to be real. There is a force to be reckoned with in that mid lane there, right? And on the other side of UniQ, Pool227 has been that force to be reckoned with in the mid lane as well. So maybe it comes down to this Errol Pool227 matchup, and whoever wins that is possibly going to dictate the tempo for the rest of the series, which means we're looking at midsection as a whole, where we suddenly look at Taxer, Antwerp, and we look at bot lane, and we try to think which players here in the support role have had the most impact in the midsection. It all cascades, but I feel like we're going to know a lot about who's going to win this matchup in the first couple of levels, except we know Verdant have comeback options, right? We know that's been the case in the past. They could end up defaulting back to that. But I do think the first few levels are going to determine a lot, particularly of what happens in midsection, especially now that Pool227's bringing out the mages, not just this Akali melee one trick that we see so many ERL players become.
That's cool. So we kind of got that game downloaded, and the next match up is our match of the split. It is the, well, possibly the biggest game of the regular split for both of these teams. Nord taking on Riddle, the winner going first place of the split. And I believe we've got a little bit of a video to get you hyped for that matchup.
They know they need every member available. Woolite has gone invisible. They're going to throw the final chapter onto Bando.
Some atypical pathing. He went red to bot lane. Like, there's nothing more atypical than that.
He went very, very aggro on WoW. This was Lingui's fight. Up against an early game Darius. Not only that, it is a WoW Darius.
Able to connect it, nearly has to flash away. Errol comes down to try and save the day. In comes WoW underneath the tower, securing himself another kill. Now Kevo, can he save the day? Errol
Possibly can. Flashes back away from the engage from Clyde as the Ricard isn't able to take him out. Johan goes over the wall and gets two with the Gore Drinker. Blood falling from the bodies on Verdant as it is a triple kill for the Lee Sin.
They're jumping in though, they're going to get the redemption down on the hill. The knockback, Woolite is low. He's going to get the revival up on the moat. A lot of CC, a lot of grey health bars. Everybody's low. Oh no, this is not going to be it.
I can't wait for that. I cannot wait for that at all, Veteran. Both of these teams have been so impervious and generally strong throughout the split in very, very different ways. And we know that Riddle have had a couple of struggles towards the back half of that split, but they've got a chance here if they can take down Nord to put themselves in a great position and give themselves a great confidence boost going into the playoffs.
And it will set the terms for the playoffs, right? Because these guys are both locked in. The other two teams that are looking to come in, Radiant, one of Verdant or Veneer, they're looking to come in and try to bring an upset in the BO5. We frequently see teams that are very, very dominant in the BO1 stage, particularly in the NLC, right? Any XL fan will remember this. Be very dominant in regular and pretty much just collapse once the BO5 marathon sets in. They have those spurts, but maybe they had a one-dimensionality. Maybe they always had a weakness they were never quite able to get over. And that's something that you can attack over the course of 5 games much easier than over the course of 1 game. And today, one of these two teams will lose. One of these two teams will bleed. We'll see exactly how they bleed in that way, and those vulnerabilities will be used against them in the playoffs. So everyone's going to be watching this, whether they're looking to face them in the BO5, whether they're just a big fan of WoW. It's a very important game, not just now, but for the rest of the regular split. Well, for the rest of the split, I should say.
Absolutely, because it's sort of a taster of what I think a lot of people are anticipating our Juggernaut matchup, our finals to be. So getting that in a BO1 on the final day of the split is going to be so tantalizing. I know that straight after that game, I'm just going to want more and more and more. But the day will persist, and we will have Ruddy facing off against Veneer after that one. I think this is a sort of individual game that could have the biggest implication for these two teams' fates. If Ruddy get the win, results go their way, they could be top 2. Veneer get the win, results go their way, they're booking their spot in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, the Veneer storyline for me has been like such an incredible one because it was a team that had so much potential from the first game, right? Like they understood how to play out their lanes. They understood even how to get to a point of closing the game. But once that late game hit, if you were to interrupt their tempo at any point, you interrupted the entire playstyle of Veneer, right?
Yeah.
And Verdant, the opposites that they are, you know, praying do not overcome UniQ in the first game, right? Had the completely different drive, right? They did not have their focus in the early parts of the game. They didn't understand how to get to that late game phase, and it was in that late game phase where they finally started coming into their own. They both had different journeys to become these complete teams, and I love the fact that today it's these two we're looking at to take that 4th spot. I obviously I have Verdant for winning. I'm a big UniQ fan for this first game, though, because it sets the stakes so massively for Veneer versus Ruddy, right?
Yes.
So massively. And I want to see how Ruddy perform with that kind of a pressure, because obviously right now a lot of people, they're going like Riddle, Nord, but I'm so jaded at this point that I'm quite used to one of these two teams is probably going to collapse early on, and then Ruddy are those guys with then Voxnay consistently being that guy to then go all the way and upset the playoffs, right? So it'll be interesting to see how they deal if Veneer have that added pressure on them and they have that added pressure of Veneer actually stepping up to play and having something to play for.
Yeah, but I think regardless of any of that, I think the quality on these teams, even if you remove the stakes necessarily from this game, there's still a lot of great players there. And I think Ruddy, they can have a tendency to try and play out these early stages in quite a controlled manner. And if Veneer are able to flip the script a little bit, we've seen some excellent stuff from Ploxy and Luca especially, making plays happen. Might have a shot at taking down one of the stronger teams in the table, but looking forward to our last game of the regular split. This one is maybe slightly less hype than some of the other matchups we got today with Domino taking down Natives, but I think this presents a good opportunity for both teams to go out on a high note.
Oh, again, Natives going 2-0 in their final week and clinching the spot over Domino in doing so. That's brilliant. That's like the weakest blue shell of all time, but a blue shell nonetheless thrown at the very, very end of the standings, you know? There's no one pays attention to these battles at the back, but I love that we have it front and center in the last game of the day. And I'm interested in how this Natives look, right? Because maybe this is the Natives that we're going to see next split. They looked pretty good in their victory, right? So let's see if they can consistently keep that up, and maybe that will change our opinions on where they stand going into the next split, because it's very tempting always to just be like, okay, this is where they all ended up at the end of playoffs. We'll just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that will be it. People do that all the time and forget how people began and how people finish. And I like maybe they barely overcome Dominoes and they barely take their spot in the standings, but maybe the performances they show over these next 2 games, or over these last 2 games, I should say, actually cements them as potentially like a 5th place team, right? Maybe even a team that could have taken on Verdant Veneer if they'd been like this early on, because that would be their starting point. And I want to know where Dominoes and Native starting points are for the next split.
And I think you can sort of make parallels with like other teams in the league. Like in that way, Veneer are a team that have scaled up over the course of the split.
Yes.
Nord have scaled up over the course of the split. Ruddy have scaled up over the course of the split. And but you question, well, 3 out of 4 ain't bad. If I made a mistake, that's absolutely fine. But
I mean, Nord's just completely dominant, right?
They've just been sort of good, and
bit...
then they kept being good, and then they stayed some good some more, and then they were just good again.
They were really good, and then they were like really good, you know, like compared to everyone else. It's a bit, but yeah, I mean, we'll see we'll see how they look at the end of the split. It doesn't matter where you start, right? It matters where you end. You could make the argument that Nord look worse just because they began with like 7 wins and then got like a loss. So there's arguments to be made there. But yeah,
Anyway.
like here, Verdant, all about the scaling and Unique. They could be a late game scaler, like for all we know. Verdant, wait, so I feel like the names are switched here.
I think we've got nameplates possibly
Nameplates
on
are
the
correct,
wrong
I
spots here.
think, because there's no reason for Unique to for Errol to ban out his own Azir. But Errol, for sure, a highlight Azir player. The Elise ban makes a lot of sense on blue side, depending on the patch that we're playing on. Are we playing 13.3 or 13.1b?
We are on 13.4, I believe.
We're on 13.4. Very interesting. Okay, so then the first 2 bans are actually extremely interesting to me. They were going for the Annie pick most likely. The Annie getting immediately banned out. This looks much more similar to me. So 1 power pick removed by Unique. A lot of respect given over to Errol there. The Annie being removed. That's good because Pool 227, we think about him as an Akali player, and he's not just in a really good spot right now, but Annie was always a strong pick into those Akalis. So Unique secured their pool and secured their comfort. But you know what Akali is normally quite good into? It's actually normally quite good into the Azir. So a lot of respect given to Errol's highlight Azir.
Well, I mean, it has to be, right? It's like the play that we cast in the Baron pit in that game versus Riddle last week. It's just absolutely unreal stuff that he can do on the champion. So showing that respect makes a lot of sense. We are going to be seeing Sejuani as the initial lock-in here for Unique. That feels like it's going towards Antwer. Gragas here, though, for Verdant. Now, this can go in multiple roles. I wouldn't be surprised to see either Nilataxer or Errol pull this out.
Yeah, so the Graguni plus a Xayah blind immediately. So Xayah on this patch, she got attack speed ratio increases, and that basically means, well, think about it with an AD carry, right? If you buff attack speed, what is it that you're really buffing? You're buffing damage output. You're buffing movement because it's much easier to kite once you buff the attack speed. You're buffing pretty much every single aspect of the champion. And Xayah is in a pretty overpowered tier right now as a result. Zeri being locked in as a mid-range pick with a melee jungler. These are the kinds of ranges Xayah feels comfortable playing in, right? And whereas you could feel like maybe moving into a more poke-oriented composition with a Zeri, the Sejuani wouldn't go so well with that. And I don't think about Unique's mid laner Pool 227 as one of those kinds of players that are going to bust out the Victor or something like this, or the Lux or anything like this, right? So I do think the Xayah's not just really good for Verdant, but paired with the Gragas shows that they think Unique. You guys can only do all-ins. We're going to do a heavy disengage comp that plays in the ranges that you feel you're comfortable in. We're going to make you very uncomfortable there.
Yeah, and then if you are able to execute on those team fights, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier for you. Unique have stolen away the Rakan pick, traditionally paired up with the Xayah. Obviously, you get the bonuses when the champions are together, but an absolutely fine champion in its own right about providing some of that sort of follow-up engage, I guess, and a little bit of disengage as well. Verdant, though, sort of doubling down on this sort of mid-range engage potential through with the support pick here. Nautilus able to find a lot of those picks.
Yeah, Braum, Leona, they're kind of the classics that you would expect once you see the Rakan brought out. Obviously, the Rakan is a denial away from the Xayah Rakan combo. That would just send Verdant's comp into overdrive. But the Nautilus, it functions similarly to how the Leona would, except with Nautilus's ultimate, the Zeri can be picked a lot easier than with any other kinds of CCs. The Leona's not going to be able to lock down the Zeri in the same way. The Braum's not really going to do anything to the Zeri, just going to counter the Rakan. So they've found a mid-ground where they counter the whole thing, and they're continuing with this disengage heavy setup. Also gives them more options when it comes to mid lane. Say that you end up with like AP jungle, AP mid. Merc's treads aren't going to do as much to a Nautilus, where his big CC is a point and click knock up, versus other champions like Leona, where the stuns and stuff will be affected by the tenacity. The Nyla is the guy we used to talk about as being the big one on Verdant. He's getting banned out by Unique, and now the Akali, respect shown towards Pool 227.
And I think it makes a lot of sense, even when you are running something like a Xayah blind, which offers you so much disengage. the Akali can just sort of persist in the backline for such a long time that you burn all of your defensive cooldowns, your Gale forces, your ults, your flashes, your heals, and she can still chase you down and kill you after that. Verdant, though, revealing a little bit about this Gragas pick here with the Gnar locked in, so that's moving down as a potential jungle, a mid flex, and Nillet is going to be piloting that Gnar up in the top side.
But we were talking, all right, our initial read on Verdant was there's likely to be a team that plays through Nyla, but they've evolved into a team where this mid-section's been everything, and they've blinded top and left their mid lane for the counter pick. We're going to see Pool 227 have to make a decision here on what he feels comfortable blinding, and Errol's going to give it his best shot to counter. Is that locked? The Cho'Gath has been locked.
That Cho'Gath is locked. Okay.
Cho into Gnar. All right, I haven't seen that for a bit, but Cho could also be mid lane, which I also wouldn't have seen. Yone, of course, an Akali player would be big on Yone as well. Okay, interesting. If I'm looking at a mid-range melee composition like this, especially something where I feel like knockups would be a big deal, I'd think about stuff like Malphite, but Errol is going into Cassio, which works really well within these ranges as well. Obviously, Merc's has become a bit more of an option. But yeah, no, I like the pickup from Errol. Basically, a full disengage comp from Verdant, plus the Gnar. Gnar can fit into almost any kind of composition.
Yeah.
So, full disengage versus a full all-in composition. Yeah, I favor Verdant pretty heavily in this draft. If UniQ win, it's going to be based on individual skill and individual outplays. They have to divide Verdant early and be able to control their map movements the rest of the game by splitting them up. If they split them up, then the 5-on-5 composition matters a lot less. This Cho'Gath will be quite interesting because I could see his silence being quite impactful onto stuff like the Cassio, etc. And it also somewhat prevented them doing anything spicier, right? Like, I look at this setup and I start thinking about Rammus, I start thinking about Malphite, I start thinking about a lot of things that suddenly Cho'Gath kind of disables. So
I'm not gonna lie, veteran. The Gnar can't shout Gnar very loudly if he's silenced.
True.
There's a lot of key abilities that you can disrupt, like a Feathers Fly. If Kevo's silenced, he's not got that disengage potential. It's such a frustrating mechanic to play against sometimes. There's only so few champions in League that actually provide it. And we were discussing there that for UniQ, they're kind of going to want to break this game if they're going to find a victory. And I look at this top side where you've got a Sejuani in the jungle, you've got two melee solo lanes that you can play towards that bring CC and a lot of reach. I feel like if you can get engages around this trio, then UniQ could have a decent time in the early stages.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering if the Cho'Gath could also break their opponents when it comes to the mid-late game stages, right? Say that you make a big game play while your opponents are trying to do their lane stops, you hold the Cho'Gath in a tri-bush for a bit, extend him up on a brush and try and make a play on his silence. Maybe you can delete the Cassio before she can throw the ultimate out, right? Use the silence, use the knockups, use all these abilities that you can't throw any abilities against, and just try to win the fight of a pick like that in the mid game. So the Cho'Gath does offer a lot of options. It's been a while since I've seen one. I'm interested to see how it's built. Especially if stuff like Radiant Virtue is utilized on him, or if maybe you could go back and see the big there's a big Comet AP full, well, he'd prefer to call it full penetration Cho'Gath build on EU West. I believe somebody in the chat will know him because he's actually a part of Fnatic's stream team. But yeah, he's big on that, so I'm interested to see the kind of Cho'Gath we have coming out here. God, it's been a while since I've seen one. Like, Wicco in the NEC used to do it, remember?
I'm voting for 10k HP Heartsteel Cho'Gath. That's all I want. I don't care about resistances or any actual tanky stacks. I just want the biggest gap in top lane possible.
I will say, if you want that, the funniest skin is then that top hat gentleman Cho'Gath.
Oh, yes.
If you just have that guy in the brush, the size of a mountain, just doing that dance thing that he does, it's the most hilarious thing you can see. Oh my lord.
The voice lines on that skin are legendary as well, by the way.
Oh yeah.
There are a few League voice lines that you probably shouldn't listen to in public. That's a good one. That's a really, really good one.
There are some champs I'll play again after ages where I'm like, I'm so glad they haven't changed this guy's VO, you know? Like,
Yeah, my word, yes.
I was reusing Singe recently and I'm so glad it's the same voice that it was before. I love that guy's voice lines, you know? So good, so good.
There's something about like listening to a champion's voice lines. It's like, oh, they've got 6. Oh, fantastic. I suppose Rammus is like the classic example with that one, just rolling around the rift, going like, okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, if I'm gonna be very judgmental on the skin that a eventual Rammus player takes, by the way, because in my opinion, there's only one proper Rammus skin. All right. This is some facts for you guys who are watching. All right. Grab the football Rammus, right?
Oh yeah.
With the green chroma.
Oh.
Right.
Okay.
Because the green chroma is the only one where Rammus has signed his shell.
That's so weird.
Yes, there's a signature on the green chroma of the football skin only. No other skin has Rammus signed. So that's the official Rammus skin.
Two questions there.
Yeah.
Okay. Why and whose signature?
It's Rammus's.
What? So he's wearing his own signed shirt.
Yeah,
that feels a bit narcissistic.
He signed his shell. But what you have to let them know that it's yours. You know. how else are they gonna know?
This is my shirt. Well, has it got your name on it? Well, actually, yes.
Actually, it does. What are you gonna do about it?
He'd have his name on the back as well, so he'd have like you'd sort of like just making especially sure.
Huh?
Veteran, we're in game. There's League of Legends. Not too much yet.
This is important, but yeah, there is.
Ooh. Rupture there from Neos. I'm trying to remember the Cho'Gath ability names. He's got the Rupture on his Q.
To me, they're all QWER. Alright? Gonna be real with you.
He's ancient. He's been around for a while.
Was he one of the original champions? I feel like he was, no?
I feel like he's sort of in that vein. Like, some of his splash outs are still very, okay, this was made in 2010. But he looks good. He's one of those champions that does just occasionally come back into relevancy in pro. He might be in a bit of trouble now as Tax is going for a gank. The Rupture not going to hit anybody. The flash away from Neos, but the flash body slam from Taxa will connect and secure first blood for Verdant.
Yeah, there's almost no way that this is going to be punished in terms of jungle. What they have to do is look to make a play on the lane. But if you look here, Verdant's wave is really, really good for them to be able to play back. Verdant got an early bounce here, or UniQ played too much pressure on that wave. And there's no way that you'll punish with counter jungling, not just because we're in the Riot Freak era of jungling, but because Cassio has so much pressure on the mid lane that she can just lean back into bot jungle and defend it at any point. So even though Taxa goes 3 camps into gank top, there's no real punishing window for Sejuani outside of just doing her camps. And Verdant know from their ward coverage that that hasn't been done. They have wards on Raptors, they have wards on Krugs. Gragas knows that he actually didn't sacrifice clear time to do this either. So very good opening start for Verdant there.
Oh, and look at this top wave. This is slowly going to be pushing back into Nellis. So if he's able to control this, he could execute a little bit of a freeze and try and shut Neos out of the game even more. Going down for that first blood isn't going to matter too much for the Cho'Gath. He's still this beefy Chad in top lane with his passive being able to regen the health, the mana. It's very hard to dislodge him from this lane.
No, part of the reason that he has most of this HP right now is because he was forced to burn teleport after that opening gank, right? So he comes back here to a pretty poor wave, but with a decent amount of HP. Nilla, on the other hand, he can afford to lose HP, take losing trades, recall, come back with teleport at full HP. Nilla has 2 health bars here, right? And if you model it like that, Cho'Gath doesn't feel like he's as safe as he could be.
Antware is making a small ingress into the bottom side jungle, just going to drop a recall there. Has been spied out and hasn't been able to sort of make that counterplay yet on the Sejuani. And in the mid lane, actually, Erol is building up a fairly substantial lead over Pool 227. This is a decent chunk of CS that is going to be going into the UniQ mid laner, but he's still going to be down. He's still at a disadvantage in this lane.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the miasma timings in this matchup, right? If Errol's able to use his W on Pool 2-7 when Pool goes in, she wins the trade. Pool has to go for knock-up trades, get his damage down, and get out immediately before Cassio is out of the knock-up, or shield miasma. If he's ever able to actually bait out the miasma like that, there's a 24-second cooldown window on Cassio's W, and in that window, Pool 227 can theoretically re-engage with E. That's the very fine timing you're looking at, which makes this a skill matchup. But if neither side's able to get those kinds of advantages, Cassio will just naturally push and naturally get these trade patterns off. And because Jungle and River were won early by this kind of free-lane victory with Gragas on top side and the full jungle tracking, Pool 227 is going to be able to find these trades.
Oh, but Clyde's able to find Pedersen as Taxa is going to be spotted making his way into the bottom side, so UniQ with that information, probably not going to be going down. And we saw a little bit of a move from Antwerp on the mini-map towards that mid lane, but wasn't able to really make it work out. Pool 2-7 has taken it back, has been forced to teleport back in, grab himself some Zerka, and hopefully, now that he's at level 6, he can apply a bit more pressure in this lane.
Yeah, but now Errol is level 6 as well. And if Errol ever hits the ultimate on Pool 227, Pool is basically dead because a miasma will come out on top of that as well, and an extended trade will happen. Right. Thank you, guys. I love it when I get visual representations of the match.
It was very, very close to going down, but I mean, now he's used his flash to get away. He still has that ult, but he's going to have to go back. He's going to miss out on another wave. And for one of the big carries on this UniQ side, not being able to get back into that lane, he's going to be falling down, and that's not what you want to be doing. Dragon is going to be able to get taken away here from Verdant, so not the most explosive early game from the 4th place team, but keeping it clean, keeping it tidy, not making any mistakes, trying to secure their spot in playoffs in the easiest way possible.
Yep. At least when it comes to the map state right now early, I mean, Verdant are looking a bit more like Veneer than they are Verdant. They've gotten full control off of that trade in the mid lane. They get the Drake immediately, and now look bot, right? They're going to be potentially in danger on the next wave. UniQ, they're trying to thin it out so that they could potentially go for a freeze. Gragas is actually around bot side right now, but he's going to lean towards top. But it looks like Clyde feels very confident to potentially take a trade on next. There's going to have to be blood. UniQ needs to take a fight, but Kevo's on 6. Cyrax is now on 6. It all depends on how they decide to play these next waves. It's technically even here, but actually UniQ could try to play for a lot on the next one. Everything that is happening, though, is happening topside instead, so maybe both sides will just end up clearing at each other. It looks like UniQ don't think they can take the fight on bot lane, given the itemizations.
And we're finding Erol. That is a beautiful cast into the petrifying gaze! The Sejuani is locked down, and Taxa gets a second kill.
See, you have to get the knock-up, and then if you get the knock-up, but you get all in afterwards, you will just lose all of your HP. You get the knock-up, you get the trade, and you get out. If you all in and you are committed and she doesn't die, you will end up losing. The matchup is that simple here. They get the knock-up immediately, they stack the knock-ups quite well, but the Gragas disengages the rest of the damage. And because of that, Cassio gets the turnaround and deletes one of them off the face of the planet.
Oh, hold up. Bot lane, we've got a kill for Kevo. Off our screen, Erol actually ended up falling down to Pool 227. I believe that was a solo kill in the mid lane. We're not going to get a chance to see what happened there, but still, it's Verdant on top, UniQ punching back.
Yeah, I mean, kind of interested to see how that kill was able to happen on mid lane. It feels like Errol must have stayed to try to fix the wave and overextended a bit too much there. You'd absolutely need the help of your Gragas to be able to do so. But Paul, with a kill on the board, getting tier 2 boots first, he definitely needs that in this matchup. Yeah, I mean, so long as he's able to get jungle coverage and go for short trades, he could end up getting a solo kill, but that would require bot and top to at least have some level of priority so he has somewhere on the lane to lean towards.
Yeah, there isn't really a place that he can go we just saw Sarix and Pedersen die in the bottom lane, and Neas has, well, he's sort of existed. Top lane hasn't really been able to do too much, and so, yeah, that presents a situation where even if you do go to those lanes, are you actually able to get anything? We are seeing UniQ covering their mid laner now, but Cly has moved over level 6.
All in.
But they're just going for it again, straight onto E-roll. Petrifying Gaze once again going to lock people under the tower, but it's not enough to save the Cass this time. Cly will grab a retribution kill, 1-for-1 in the mid lane.
You can see why they chose this Gragas super early on, though. UniQ, they opt into the all-in composition that Verdant know UniQ need to play, feel comfortable doing, and the Gragas there is just trying to make sure they can't get all their cooldowns off on the all-in the way that they want, isolating them in turn. But this time around, Pool 2-7, he doesn't actually get hit by the miasma off this. That separation forces Elle to choose one side to ultimate. She doesn't ultimate the big damage dealer, doesn't miasma the big damage dealer either, and he's able to get his ultimate off and is able to finish up that fight and get Cassio down. I think if you're UniQ, you're perfectly fine trading kills from Gragas onto kills onto your Yone. I think for you, that's a victory overall. Pool 2-7, he's in this game and he is a living win condition for UniQ. But you can also see from that Gragas how the composition will get harder to play if you're constantly in these group situations. They need to get to mid game and they need to get into the late game in a situation where they can split that 5-man.
And shout out to Tax, right? This is a guy that hasn't maybe had as much impact in the traditional jungler sense that he should have done over the course of this split. But coming out in this game, he's been a big reason of why Verdant have been able to shut down a lot of the plays that UniQ have been going for towards the mid lane. And with that AP style build, whilst you prefer those kills maybe on your Cassiopeia, there's still going to be a load of bursts coming out for this Gragas, which UniQ are going to have to watch out for.
UniQ's bot lane, at the very least, have recognized that they cannot take any of these fights and are essentially just giving the waves and going for the soft resets. But this gives so much pressure to Verdant that you don't get an isolation again on Cassio.
Taxa once again, bombers in Antwerp. Pedersen turning up with a grand entrance, but he is late to the party. Nothing he can do as everybody from Verdant converges on the mid lane after finding their 3rd kill on the UniQ jungler.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to give a bit of a hats off to Antwerp, to be honest. Like, he is obviously not the pedigree jungler here, but you're correct. Taxa is doing his job properly. He is matching mid properly. He's just being one of those guys where if there's a clear win con that he needs to play around, he'll play around it very, very strongly, which in the current meta is almost perfect for him, right? But Antwerp, he is really trying to find these windows on the Cassio. He's really trying to find these windows against a scenario where he has 3 losing lanes, and he has found some. He's died for them, but he's getting his win cons off, and that's more than you would have expected UniQ to be able to do coming into the draft.
Absolutely, and they've been such a nearly team this split, and I think that's one of the problems that we've really had with them. Like, there's clearly very, very strong individual talent, and Pool 2-7, after kind of being dumpstered in the early laning phase, he's come out to a pretty decent position now, 2-0 on the Yone, not yet completed that Immortal Shield Bow. And despite the lead that Verdant have built for themselves, you need to care for this guy because he can turn a team fight in an instant.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I would feel like Verdant are the ones who would prefer the team fights, though, right? You can already see, particularly looking at the bot lane there, how much they don't want to play into those ranges, and they especially don't want to do it in the group scenario. Right now, the only real way that UniQ are able to find anything is because the isolations turn into their favor on mid lane. Being in the 5-on-5, you're not going to be able to guarantee that. So, split map scenario, right? Yone on side lane, make the game the Pool 2-7 show, right? And then you're looking at the Zeri and you're looking at the Rakan as more of a duo that can traverse the map faster than a Xayah Nautilus can, right? Even on a soft reset scenario in mid lane, if they can't win the 2v2, Zeri could theoretically join the fight on side lane at nearly the same time, maybe even earlier, depending on how her long jump's feeling that day.
How bigger leg muscles are feeling? I don't know where I was going with that.
I mean,
Weird
Zeri
direction.
never skips leg day. Look at her.
I imagine. Well,
She's
you would
working
need
it,
to
I'm telling
have.
you.
You would need to have like fairly decent like legs if you're going to like jump that
She's
far.
doing
right?
like 200 kilo hack squats like 3 times a week.
I don't know what that is.
I'm not gonna act like I'm surprised. What that is.
Whoa! Hold on, veteran. I'm
You
offended
skip
by
leg
that.
day,
Meanwhile,
middle
hold on, Nile, caught out by Glacial Prism, but is going to be able to escape just fine. Has just taken down the first tower of the game and building back up that side lane advantage on the Nars, resulted in Verdant having.
Because Nars never skipped leg day in his life.
Well, I mean, there was that time that he had like big ice bars, so I guess that was recovery. Pedersen is not able to finally engage onto Kebra, and now the Rakan is in a dire spot. Just about able to battle dance himself away as Paul 227 gets over the wall in time as well. Pedersen getting ignited, Clyde just being a little bit BM, but Verdant, they could afford to do that at this stage with everybody rotating over this mid lane tower is not long for the world. There is nothing that UniQ can do to defend it.
I mean, it's BM, but he forced the recall to now be out of sync with what they would like to have Rakan back on the map. Now, Verdant are doing all of their recalls. Rakan is only just coming out. Cho, Yone are only just coming out, and because all of the recalls got reset by that ignite, they're all coming out on the map at the same time, which means UniQ can't just take back vision control for free in the way that they would have been able to if Nautilus hadn't cheekily prevented the Rakan recall. You never want someone to just recall on their own. If Rakan's recalling, then we're recalling our Cho'Gath, we're recalling our Zoe, recalling our Yone then as well. If he's not able to recall, and we come out on the map while he's still recalling, we're just going to be at numbers disadvantage. See all of the deep vision that Verdant have now? If Rakan was able to be out on the map 10 seconds faster, he would feel safe to go into the jungle and take back that vision. But as is, he knows there's a risk. The Gragas could have been there, the Nautilus could have been there, the Gnar could have been there, the Cassio could have been there, and he doesn't want to add another kill to the 5 kill total that Verdant have.
Oh god, what a horrible composition to face check into, right?
Oh, yes.
Like,
Well,
just...
the one I'm most worried about face checking here is still the Cho'Gath, to be honest. I have nightmares about that. It's Rod of Ages, by the way. Makes sense.
Pedersen, I don't think you want to be here, buddy.
This is the kind of scenario I was talking about, but I didn't need a visual illustration of it, Pedersen.
Well, we've already had one sort of example as, well, Ero gets one of the easiest kills of his life, and with 45 seconds to Drake, actually, Verdant already on 2. We could be looking at a sole point for them, and that would really put UniQ in a dire spot if the map wasn't bad enough for them. If they're fighting up against a Verdant with a load of Drakes in their pocket, a Mountain Soul potentially, then it's going to be even harder, and Paul might get caught out on the side lane here. Has the flash, has the ult if he wants to get away. Get a buff for that and flash away from the Jedge line. Beautifully played by the UniQ mid laner to get out of that engage.
Yeah, but Verdant, full control of the map right now. Full 227 just has to wait for the wave to come in, and that means who's got priority on the Drake here? Sure, Zeri has prior on mid, but you're not really too worried about a flanking Zeri. You'd actually feel pretty confident about collapsing there. Verdant, they're definitely not done. With this pressure, it's not like Zeri or Khan Sedge can do something cheeky around Drake. They have to go back and defend tier 3, or this Herald is going to go all the way to the inhibitor, and opening a bot lane inhibitor at 1830, that would be terrible. So knowing the map movements the enemy has to take, you have a free Drake right now. Very, very cleanly done by Verdant. They've clearly studied since the opening of the split, right? These aren't moves that we would think about early Verdant doing, but now they're moves that we're not surprised by seeing from them. Nice attempt, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you can try that. Ultra Shock Laser, it's done some damage in patches past, but I think Zeri is not quite at that point in terms of OP nature, and this was a big game for Verdant, right? It's their chance to keep their playoff chances in their own hands. A loss here and then you're relying on Ready to D with Solid versus Veneer. Looking at that matchup, you think that's likely, but we've had stranger things happen in the NLC, but they've built themselves a decent lead in this game, and if they're able to take this and close it out, then we have got all of our playoff representatives locked with the first game of the day.
Is this setup perfect macro. It isn't. But the intent is a hard shadow on Pool 227, who on the other side of UniQ is the only way that they have to deny the clean win from Verdant, the clean challenge in towards the playoffs from them. And I'm glad to see that they're doing it. The intent that they have with the composition is clearly good, though now they're behind on resets against their opponents. Any goal that they had, they kind of need to spend now. Their opponents have spent it, but the Cassio, she looks like she might be out of sync with everybody else. We'll see if they're able to react to it or if they don't have enough knowledge of it. It looks like Rakan's already off to match, so Yon now has to go off the map as well. They're not going to be able to do much about this play, but they at least know that the Cassio doesn't have Unleashed Teleport on the Baron rotation.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a pretty decent-sized resource invested post 20 minutes for what is ultimately just ensuring that you're going to be getting a bot lane shove. I'm anticipating that we're going to see E-Roll then rotate through the map to the rest of his team, and maybe you're going to send Nilla there off reset just so you can make sure that whoever's pushing out that bottom lane has a teleport so they can join the team if we see a scuffle around the Baron.
Yeah, I mean, Gnar has to be the one to go catch the bot wave now, right? With the Unleashed Teleport. Yeah. So, do you want to match your Yone up against the Gnar or not? Because your Yone, he has the Unleashed Teleport. He could theoretically just be a split-pushing force on bot lane. If you're throwing him top lane, you're indicating more that you want to take the group fight with him. Right now, you don't have tier 1 bot lane out, you don't have tier 2 bot lane out, so it looks like what they want to do is a 2-lane setup around the Baron, knowing that they can't threaten anything sufficiently bot to maybe force Verdant off of the Baron, and knowing that they have a fast Baron with Cassio. They're going for these kinds of brush plays that we were talking about beforehand. The Cho'Gath makes it a bit scarier for me, but Yone, he has the gold, he has decent itemization right now. If someone missteps, this could be kills!
Taxa could get caught! Every single ultimate in the world is going to be dropped onto the Gragas, but the stopwatch buys a million years!
God.
They can't kill anybody! Verdant escape with their lives, and now Paul 227 is caught. Kevo with the kill onto the Yone, and Neas is going to fall as well. A double for the Xayah. UniQ go for the Hail Mary, but the play doesn't work out.
I respect the attempt. They had the priority bot before they set that up. Gnar pushing out all of bot. You sacrifice some economy there for potentially getting prio on the Baron. It wasn't to be in terms of kills, but at least Verdant aren't able to get the Baron off of it because you have sufficient poke with the Zeri and sufficient threat and got their health bars down enough that Verdant don't feel confident exposing themselves by going for a big Baron play at this point.
Veteran.
So maybe they could reset again and get that, but you have to think they didn't have the items to do it then. The enemy's only going to get stronger. Look how low Taxa got here. He won't have stopwatch on the next, but, you know, if he ever finishes the Zhonya's, I guess that's about 2k away. And it looks like he wants to go for Void Star first. I guess on the next attempt, it might be doable. They threw everything onto Taxa. Taxa turned out to have stopwatch. He's not going to have a Zhonya's on the next round. They likely have one attempt at this again to try to get a really big lead before Zhonya's comes out on the enemy teams. You see Cassio getting Zhonya's out there as well. And it looks like Taxa now feels like he needs to go for it. So we're looking at not very many rotations before you can't do those plays.
Yeah. We said face checking into Verdant's comp is unpleasant. And I think the UniQ support experiencing that well and truly there is... Hold up, we got Nile jumping onto Saracdes. Be careful, those Paul 227 is going over the wall. Gnar hops away and dodges away from the Fate Seal. That stopwatch! Once again, it's buying so much time. Verdant abusing that item and abusing Paul 27, who is in a 1v5. And I'm not sure that the Yone is sufficiently sped to play out this one. He's buying a lot of time, actually, but not enough. Another pick in the bot side jungle for Verdant. Drake has just spawned. They're grabbing Mountain Soul.
Buying a lot of time for who, though? He is the guy that the rest of the team should be buying time for. And honestly, he's being controlled very easily by the Verdant anti-dive composition. You say you don't want to face check it. You don't really want to engage on it. You don't really want to be in a 5-on-5 against this team. It has too many options and you have too few. This looks like Verdant are looking to do Soul and cleanly close this game out.
Yeah, their play over the last few minutes has been very much, we want to keep our destiny in our own hands. We're not going to flip the Baron. We're not even going to flip a Drake. We'll make sure that we get absolutely everything that we can. We put ourselves in the best possible position to close out this game and secure the 4th and final playoff spot.
Yeah, and I mean, they deserve it, right? There was a point where we thought Verdant may end up going, not necessarily all the way, but they were getting so many surprise wins that we didn't really know where their limit was. Then they started getting a lot of losses, and we started thinking, okay, they've been figured out, but they bounced right back off of that and became an actually good team. I think they can be very proud of everything that they have accomplished over the course of this split, and they definitely can say that they deserve this spot, even if the last win comes against UniQ in such a dramatically dominant fashion. Honestly, if you want to give me a game that's won in draft, this feels like one of them.
But, I mean, hey, when you're heading into the playoffs as the lowest seed there against these teams, which on paper are better than you, I'd want to be closing out the game with closing out the split with a commanding game, with a draft depth as you describe it. I want to be in the best possible form heading into the postseason. Cly, maybe a little bit isolated here, but Nile's going to jump over the wall and try and help out his boy Taxa with another exceptional explosive cast to break up the play as Paul 227 is trying to get his first kill of the game, but Nile is on a killing spree to take out. Meanwhile, Kevo is just going 1v3 on the side. The Xayah is not going to survive that situation, and actually UniQ have managed to pull out a 2-for-2 in their own jungle. They are not done with this game yet.
Yeah, the Cho'Gath actually is doing an impressive amount right now. He's on his 10 stacks, he's on his Demonic Embrace. He's even bought a pot knowing that if they were to lose the next fight, the game is definitely going to be decided on that. Look how tanky he is right now. He doesn't get hit by that much. He gets effectively ignored. It manages to get the knock-up, then collapses on Kevo. Antwer's not doing that much burst, but Cho'Gath just removes him from the game. That's an interesting threat then, that UniQ have, a secondary threat over the Yone that you have to think the opponents have been itemizing against. Maybe you can stopwatch, and maybe you can build Warden's Mail, maybe you can build all of this Zhonya's, all of this armor against the Yone. But the Cho'Gath, you need to be building HP against that guy, and he looks like a force to be reckoned with right now. This Cho'Gath could be upset potential for UniQ. Imagine if he was there on those brush plays from earlier, like we were talking about during the draft phase, right? Maybe they would have had the damage to be winning those fights. Maybe now you just pivot this all around your top laner. We don't generally think about Neas as that guy for UniQ, but maybe in this final game, he becomes it.
Well, he's not going to be able to use that Cho'Gath ultimate to steal away Baron. Verdant spotting out a couple members of UniQ out of position and will claim that one with ease. So for the next few minutes, you've got this enhanced push, and that's going to time up very, very nicely with the Elder Drake in just under 3 minutes. Verdant definitely doing this game by the book.
They have to push in, though, now with the Baron buff, right? So brush plays can be set up, but you have to clear shallow vision. Clear shallow vision, and when the opponents go in to try to take vision back to allow themselves to push up with Baron, that's when you do your all-ins. That's when you come out the brush. That's when you close the gap. That's when you get your burst out and pray that the Cassio is at least part of that initial knock-up silence CC chain that denies her the disengage. Pray that Gragas is part of it and deny his disengage. Pray that this Nautilus isn't the least idiot-proof Nautilus on the server and survives the entirety of the burst, right? They need to make sure that the disengage tools and Verdant doesn't get out in that small window where they lair that CC and they close the gap. Doesn't look like they can do that on bot side. They set up top side, but all of the vision control is already for Verdant on the bot side, which means Verdant have essentially forced UniQ into a 5v5 situation, and we know that that's not favoured.
The wave that they've got shoved under this tower isn't massive though, and with the ruptures from range, Neas can actually provide a fair bit of wave clear. This does feed up Neas in the mid lane to get a shove down, so Verdant playing on both of these lanes as the waves crash in. They are going to be able to take out that tower, and 427 is trying to catch out Nile, but with that moment of aggression, that's going to free up this bot lane inhibitor to fall down without any defense.
Yeah, the bot inhibitor's gone. They're heavily pressuring the mid one, and if they take the mid one out, it is all too easy to take that top tier 2 into a flank on the tier 3, right?
Oh, catch onto Cyrex. They block the Ricard immediately. Verdant have already got a couple of kills in this fight, and Kevo is hunting for the third. Zuri, a little bit too strong to play onto, but The middle
All right,
side
nice.
of the Rift. We've got Neas and Paul, 227
Now's the
trying
moment.
to defend, but it doesn't look likely. The wave is going to be escorted in. We've got ults available for both of the UniQ solo laners in their final game of the split. The defense
not giving him the range.
is not going to happen though. Verdant are just refusing to allow them in. Finally, Paul 227 tries to make something happen, but it will not. Verdant, with their 8th win of the split, lock themselves into playoffs.
Show without a brush feels so painful sometimes because those Qs with the movement speed available for Verdant are so easy to dodge. So how do you really engage her? You want your Yone to go in first? Well, there's so many tools to control that. Very, very difficult scenario. Once Verdant were like, okay, you've got control of top side. Let's just take full control of bot side. Oh, now it's a 5v5. You lose the game. Well scouted by Verdant. Well executed by Verdant. No one can deny that. Very clean executions on the early game. But still, signs of life from UniQ. This is exactly what UniQ wanted to do. But the Gragas was just there. Taxa was ever present. Reacts brilliantly, and it comes down to these last 300 bits of HP. UniQ, they were able to get their stuff off a few times, here being one of them, right? Yes, they do sacrifice some for it. Antwer dies for this, but he does get on towards his carry. But I mean, overall, Verdant, they read UniQ like a book. No Cho'Gath here, stopwatches everywhere, anti-dive champions everywhere, knockups everywhere. If you didn't pull off this composition perfectly as UniQ, it was going to be taken advantage of, and Verdant did that. And, you know, this is what you need to see from a team that is a playoffs team, right?
Yeah.
Scouting becomes everything when you get to the BO5 stage. BO1 stage, I've always said, it's one of those stages where you play for yourself, you figure out your own identity, and then BO5 stage, you figure out everyone else's identity. In that marathon, if you keep pressing at those individual weaknesses of your opponents over and over again, you can win a BO5, and they're going to be against stack competition. Nord, Riddle, Ruddy, all somewhat feel undefeated unless you're looking at them within the 3-man against them each other, right? And Verdant, they have to take on them. At least against UniQ, they showed it's not even close. They aren't a bottom tier team. They're not a team fighting to be a mid-tier team. They're a team that's looking to be a top tier team, and that was a statement game that propels them into that competition.
And I tell you what, it was a statement game from Taxa coming out of the jungle. I feel like that Gragas was so impactful. And if we're discussing MVP candidates, I think he's someone that I'd want to put forward because those early counter ganks onto the mid lane, very, very clutch. That escape in the top side around the Baron where UniQ weren't able to pick him. And then it felt like every single explosive cast that he was throwing into the team fights was catching out multiple members, causing the chaos, which meant UniQ weren't able to get the win.
No, he definitely had a lot of impact. I feel like the bot lane didn't really get that much attention this game either, but honestly, the opposing bot lane just understood they could not play into them at any point. Every time we looked at the wave state bot, they were playing it very, very well, and they were making their moves towards mid lane like they should be and having that impact. And obviously, Nautilus was just completely unkillable at a point. But overall, yeah, I think Taxa's reactions to the state of play on mid lane was probably the most impactful thing here, but so too was Errol's. Right, Errol's really come into his own over the course of the split. From being a guy that, you know, we had some hype about, but ultimately he wasn't going to be our main focus for this, into the guy who's definitely being the centerpiece. Everything is exploding around mid lane because the Cassio's doing so well in the one-on-one on her own, and the only way that they were ever going to be able to get all ins was on these group scenarios, and she was finding ways to outplay it at almost every point. So for me, I feel like I'd give it to Errol. I understand the argument for Taxa. Definitely this mid-section, mid-jungle is the place to look. I kind of want to give it to Errol though, because the development over the course of the split into this monster deserves to be recognized. Biel or Middlecott, I'll leave it over to you.
You've made a compelling argument. Unfortunately, I'm going to overrule you. Taxa MVP for the game today. But we are now going to be joined for a couple of interviews for this game. So we're going to be having Pedersen here from UniQ. Tough loss on the day. Obviously, last game of the split. Kind of just want to get your thoughts on how the last few weeks have gone for you guys.
When we won our two first games in the first half of the split, we felt pretty good because we lost all the great teams, and then we thought we're about to turn it now, and then we just kept on losing, and then we got the win against Domino, and we thought, yes, it's our time, and then we lost to Native yesterday, so I think the hope today wasn't that great, so we just tried our best to keep up mental, I think.
Yeah, and then what? I suppose that's quite important, obviously, because you guys have found yourself this split in kind of a no man's land in terms of what you're playing for. You're not right at the bottom of the table hunting for your first win, but playoffs has been something that has just been a little bit out of reach for you guys. You were talking about the mental in the camp over the past few weeks. How has that been?
I think the mental has been pretty good. I just think that when we lost to Native yesterday, there are not really much to play for today, but we actually have a tiebreaker if Domino wins, so we actually had something to play for anyway. I think the mental is pretty good. I think we have some players with great skill level, but I think just didn't click that well as we thought it would. So sometimes happens in teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I think veteran, that's something that I think you've identified a lot throughout this split, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I was to ask you something, Pedersen, like you were into Gragazaya opening, you did Rakan to pick away, then you end up into Cassiopeia and Nautilus. Is this the single most painful Rakan game of your entire life, or?
It was actually really painful. It's not that fun into Tna anyway either, so it's like 5 players that's really bad for me.
Yeah.
We just thought that we want to take away Sire Rakan, and then we forgot that Erol is a bit of a casher main as well, so for me it's just I can never do anything at all. I'm just locked down, and W is just off the table.
Yeah. I mean, do you think when it comes to the next split, you guys might look into more like targeted compositions, or do you think you're quite comfortable with your identity? You're very much an all-in team, right? Particularly when we look at mid lane, it's very much melee all-ins, but even when it's not that, like you had Orianna ball compositions and stuff like this, right? Do you think it's a case of like focusing more on that identity, or are you going to start like molding it more to your opponents, or what do you think is the future for UniQ?
I think when it didn't go that great, I think we just tried to do more teamfighting comps, because it's a lot easier when you're not that clicked together. But I think we can do all of them. I think if we stick together for next bit, I don't know how we'll look turn out, but I think we could do other stuff if we have more time. Sure.
Absolutely, place to grow. Well, Pedersen, if we don't get the chance to speak with you again for the rest of this bit, I'm not sure whether we're doing interviews for the tiebreakers, but if that should happen, it would be great to chat with you then. But just before we let you go, anything you want to say for your last regular split interview?
We hope Natives win so we get 6th.
Go Natives!
We've got big Natives fans on the broadcast. I did as well. Okay, so we've got a little bit Native fans here. But thank you very much, Pedersen, for joining with us. Unlucky today. We'll see you soon, mate.
See you guys.
Yep.
Okay, and now we are going to be joined by Riddle from Verdant. How are you doing, mate? That has locked you guys into playoffs.
Wait, who's Riddle, man? I'm ATN.
Yeah, I've been told that you're Riddle, man.
It's fine. Don't worry. Yeah, I'm doing good. Obviously, NLC production value is quite funny, but yeah, we're doing really good. We're really happy in the camp with getting playoffs. It's good.
And so it's been a bit of a weird past couple of weeks here. I want to say, just in terms of the results and what we've seen from Verdant, but it does feel like you guys have sort of trended up, and you've shown a lot of grit against some of these top of the table teams. So looking towards playoffs now, how are you rating your chances?
So yeah, I think it's quite important first and foremost to sort of like hit on as you say, Middlecott. The last couple of weeks I think has shown a real upwards trend for us, and I think that's kind of how we've seen the split. Is we've wanted this to kind of be a slow burner, like we want to peak at the right time, and I think right now what you guys are seeing is what we're building up to. So next week going into playoffs, I think is our first game, and I think that's going to be realistically, hopefully, when everything comes together, when we can tie all of the aspects that we're working on in scrims together. And I hope, I think a lot of people will be critiquing us, and a lot of people, as you guys were saying on the broadcast, a lot of people will be watching just to see how we deal with this game and bounce back from the loss versus Ruddy yesterday. But I think we like our chances. I think we certainly have the culture and we have the capability to be able to move into next week and look really, really, really solid. So we're feeling positive.
And that's great to see for you guys. I think that journey across the split has been very interesting to track, hasn't it, Veteran?
Yeah, I mean, you guys were a team where initially it didn't look, to be real, it didn't look like you guys knew what you were doing for the first 20 minutes of the game, and then late game hit, you knew that Taxir had been kissed by God at some point in his life and could just give you guys comeback tools on those late game rotations. But your development from that point, after you started losing there, has been extremely impressive. So if any team deserved to do it, definitely it was you guys. But what I want to get into is that last little bit, right? Because you figured yourselves out, you figured the game out, and then this game, it felt a lot like you came in having figured UniQ out, having figured your opponents out. You kind of knew the only things that they like to play, and you countered it at every stage of your draft. Was this a scouting thing you guys were doing? Is this a preview for what you guys have planned for your top 3 opponents? Do you think you can figure them out as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think the draft yesterday was a little bit experimental with the Bomber. But as you say, right, the first few games haven't exactly been kino, they haven't been great to watch. But yeah. I think one of the most important things for me personally is I've kind of adopted more of a strategic role on this team. So the last couple of weeks, I think, particularly has been a case of sort of marking out what we want to be doing, as you guys have noticed. But with this game specifically, again, for me personally, I know UniQ quite well. I know their coaching staff quite well. I know quite a few of their players. So it was very much the case where we had a very good idea of what they wanted to be doing coming into the game. The more that we start to think strategically about and how we want to be implementing drafts and implementing our process during the game, the more we start to think about that, the sort of easier it becomes to sort of flesh out what our opponents are going to be doing in a theoretical world, and then act to sort of counter that from a draft perspective, but also applying the draft, which I think is a massive, massive part of what we've been working on.
Yep, I think you did that brilliantly today, by the way. The execution of the draft, not just the draft itself, was very on point. So you're going to have to do that against Riddle, Nord, and Ruddy, who you obviously lost yesterday. Do you have similar plans? Have you worked them out in the same way as UniQ?
Yes and no. I think certainly against Nord and Riddle, I think it's actually quite easy to sort of see what they're going to do, to be honest. I don't actually think that there's too much depth to the strategy, so I think it's a case of if we can come out swinging in that respect, I do think that we can at the very least put up a good show for the audience. Ruddy, I think, can be a bit of a mixed bag sometimes because I think they've got a bit more versatility. I think how they've been drafting previously with their coaching staff, I think, has been very interesting. Maybe they might lose a bit of depth going into the playoffs, but I think all in all, again, it's just a case of taking every game as it comes and trying to do the best strategic plan that we can possibly think of and try to, again, implement that as best as we can and then try and figure things out on the fly if we need to.
You heard it here first, Nord and Riddle. You're easy, according to Verdant. All right. Good luck. I've really enjoyed seeing your development, and I love rooting for underdogs. So, going to be very interested in your first playoff games.
Cool. Thank you very much. It's been great to entertain you guys, and just to sign off because I guess it's my duty for the regular split. I just wanted to thank all of our friends, all of our family, and all of our fans, especially, just for supporting us throughout the whole split. So, and like I say, I hope that we can provide good entertainment moving into playoffs.
Thank you very much, ATN. Yeah, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. The fans, the people out there cheering for you guys as you create poetry on the Rift. Thank you very much for this interview, mate. Best of luck for the playoffs.
Thank you, guys.
Right, I believe the production is telling us to very, very swiftly go to break, and I don't want to hang around either because coming up in a few minutes, we have got our match of the week. Winner takes first place, Nord versus Riddle. You don't want to miss this.